If I seem a little bit off kilter tonight, it's because it's a bit busy at this end of the table. I just wanted to do a quick intro to my Cromford pickups, because it occurs to me that when I was doing my big long video, which I then segmented into intros for my other Cromford videos, I didn't cover this off. So what did I pick up from Cromford? Well, not as many toys as you might have expected. In fact, I came back with largely paper-based items, really, because I just found myself in an area that had a lot of comics and a lot of books, and one other item, which the eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted in the Cromford Comic Con video, which is a bit of a marathon, I know, but it was briefly partially shown in there. And that was probably, for me personally, the most sort of emotion-evoking pickup of the entire day. And it was the last thing in the world that I expected to find at Cromford Comic Con, of all places. So I'll just let you get on with watching this, and you'll see at the end what I picked up that had particular meaning for me. Cheers for now. Now then, as at the time of recording, you should have caught up with my Matlock Vintage Toy Exchange video, my Cromford video, and my Cromford Collector's Corner video. So these are the pickups from all those locations and a bookshop, just because I'm trying to cover all the bases here. Now, as you can see, this is Lion-O, Mighty Lord of the Thundercats, with absolutely no accessories whatsoever, I'm afraid. But I've never had a Thundercats toy. I've actually had, I always say this sort of thing, don't I? That's a fib, because it does occur to me that I have got the reboot toys from the Thundercats series that followed the original 80s cartoon, but they are broadly the same characters, but obviously they're done in a very different style. I have covered them before, but it was probably quite a while ago now. And as I say, this is the first time I've actually picked up the original LJN Thundercats figures. And I got this from Matlock Vintage Toy Exchange, because I don't like to leave empty-handed when I've sort of filmed in there. So this guy he's slightly less posable than a He-Man figure that I picked up recently, which slightly surprised me because I thought they'd be similar for the time. But his chest doesn't turn. He's only got sort of fixed arms, fixed legs. But he does have a couple of interesting quirks, which I was reminded of recently, actually. Now, as you can see here, he's got this switch on his back. And the switch on his back does this. So he can use the Sword of Omens in a sort of aggressive fashion by pulling this switch down at the back. So that's quite cool. But you might also notice this. And this is not a screw thing. This is actually for a little sort of, almost like a charger device. I've never actually had one in the hand, so I don't know exactly how it's powered and so on. But the idea was that you sort of plugged it in here, and then I think both his eyes and his belt symbol light up like they would have done when he was summoning the Thundercats in the series using the Sword of Omens. And of course he would have held the Sword of Omens here, and he would also have had his gauntlet, his sort of combat glove. I can't remember what the appropriate name for that was, Thunderclaw or something. And that just sort of fits on over his hand there. So there are 3 separate accessories that he would have had he come in his original packet. But as I say, unfortunately, I don't have any of those. So I just have, what I think is a reasonable condition bare Lion-O. He's got a little bit of paint missing from his nose, but otherwise, I think he's in pretty good shape for his age. So I can't say that obviously he lacks the articulation of modern action figures. They all do at this sort of, from this sort of era, to broadly speaking anyway. So, I'm not too upset about it as a concept, but I can see why they would have been popular, because he's a good size. He's a big figure to actually sort of have in your hand and just sort of play and sort of battle with other figures of the same scale. It's a good sized toy at the end of the day. So So that was what I got from the Vintage Toy Exchange. I mean, as with any of these other places, you could easily spend a fortune there if you weren't careful. But that was all I got on this occasion. Now, I'm just going to briefly cover off what I got from actually an antique store in Cromford Mills. It's one of these sort of cabinety places, and I spotted this. Now, this is pretty obscure. You might be surprised to hear this is actually a transformer. Those of you who are familiar with your G1 era transformers might not be so surprised, but it is nevertheless technically a transformer. I picked him up for the grand sum of £1 British, ladies and gentlemen, largely because I think he's not in the best condition. They probably didn't know what on earth it was. They probably assumed that it was a very, very cheap plasticky toy, and they would not be incorrect in that assumption. I mean, he's got arms that move a bit. He's lost quite a lot of his paint. He's not the best example, but he is, however, he is a pretender. So the idea behind the Pretenders as a G1 Transformers line was that you would have Autobots and Decepticon figures inside these shells, which would help. I think the idea was that they would help to heal the Transformers inside and otherwise disguise them. And they didn't disguise them in the slightest, because this isn't going to fool anybody. Why is that a disguise? Basically, hunk of plastic, feels nasty, but it is solid plastic in fairness, so yeah, I get that. But these guys themselves would have had accessories. He's supposed to have a belt along here. He's missing his belt. This is very much a spares and repairs kind of guy, but I've never actually owned one before, strangely. So I thought, well, it would be rude not to as he sat there. I'm just going to rescue him from the table of oddments that he's stood on, because there isn't really anything on him that gives away the fact that he's from the Transformers line. There's no Autobot emblem, there's no Decepticon emblem on him. Perhaps there should be, I'm not sure. Answers on a postcard on that one. But anyway, I picked him up and I brought him home, and I'm showing him to you. I've no idea if anyone would be interested in purchasing him from me, because he's not really a terribly displayable figure, but I thought for the sake of £1, I might as well just grab him. And in fact, he's called Landmine, I should mention. I had to look that up. I confess I did not know what he was called. I only recognised him as looking like he probably would be a Pretender, because, as I say, I never owned any of them. I just saw them in the sort of the magazine adverts and so on of the day, so I kind of thought, yeah, I think that's what it is. But I did confirm that after the fact. Now then, things get slightly less toy-like shortly, but I did want to show you this. This guy I remember quite well. In fact, I'll hold him up because he's a little bit smaller than the others. And this is just a Star Wars AT-AT driver, as in from Empire Strikes Back. And it's just, I occasionally pick loose guys up. And I remember that I always liked these guys and the TIE Fighter pilots, because they're like the sort of, generic sort of henchman bloke in a helmet, so because we can't even be bothered to pay anyone to show their face. It's just like, I feel quite sorry for the actors who played these guys, because they get absolutely zero sort of face recognition off the back of playing these roles where they're just generic uniformed helmeted people. But I imagine it probably lets them reuse actors and keep their costs down, although perhaps by this stage cost wasn't such an issue. But nevertheless, I like the level of detail on them. His limbs are a little bit loose, but I just picked this up as part of my trading deal with Ian at Cromford Collectors. So it's quite nice to have one back again, and I'll pop him on my sort of random Star Wars figures shelf in due course. Now, as I mentioned, I didn't really go in for a huge amount of toys from Ian's place, because Ian isn't really focused on toys as much as he is comics. And the comics that caught my eye were these. And this is one of those series where you probably haven't heard of it. And I wouldn't blame you if you hadn't, because I think it's probably fairly niche, and I only know of it because, as you will be aware, I sort of tend to fanboy a little bit over stuff that J. Michael Straczynski writes, because I like the style of his writing. So I haven't actually read any of these yet. I've read one single issue of this title. And this is Rising Stars, J. Michael Straczynski's Rising Stars from Top Cow and Image. So I have got not one, but 2, 3, and 4, and a little extra one that Ian remembered existed when I went back the next day. So he's very kindly given me all of those in part exchange for the stuff that I brought in. And I was more than happy with that. I wasn't looking to get sort of, loads and loads out of him on that sort of basis. In fact, that's just reminded me that I did get something else from him, which I've completely forgotten to put out. So I just need to grab it out of this bag. Excuse me a moment. Yep, completely forgot about this. What else have I got? So not only did I get those, I also got this. I have no idea what this is. I literally just saw it and went, Enterprise, right, yep. Star Trek Spaceflight Chronology, 1980 to 2188. An illustrated guide to the history of space travel from Space Shuttle to USS Enterprise. And it'll be completely out of date now. £1.99 at the time of issue. But I love the fact that Ian's got stuff like this slotted in amongst all the comics. Because he'll just have these sort of random kind of, sort of picture books and stuff that are geeky, but not what you'd really expect to find anywhere else, perhaps, and you wouldn't necessarily be hunting for it. But I like the fact that they're in his sort of overall collection, and you can just sort of trip across them. So I thought that was very cool. So I'm going to have a look at that in due course. If it's any good, obviously I might do a separate video on it, but we'll see. The other thing I got then, because he didn't stop me at any point, so I just sort of kept grabbing random stuff off the shelves, was this. And I've never actually, and obviously, yes, we've had the film since, but this is the graphic novel which, I dare say, inspired the film. So this is Civil War, and this is when there was a storyline along the lines of an act was passed like the Sokovia Accords, which basically said that superheroes had to register their civilian identities and basically, so they could be accountable for what they did. And as I recall, it was Captain America and Iron Man, as it was in the film, on either side of it. And Spider-Man was involved with the whole situation as well. So I've been meaning to read it for a while, because I know it's one of those, what would you call them, like an anchor comic sort of idea, like a key sort of storyline, I suppose, in the overall development of Marvel as a whole. So that, I think, was my entire haul from Collector's Corner. But it's a nice sort of subset of the sort of stuff that Ian carries in there. If you if you go across, and as I say, I've got a separate video up on that. Now, I'm going to get the name of this next place wrong, because I haven't double checked before I started filming. I think it's called the Carvin Bookstore, and I didn't know it was in Cromford until this visit. So I got a couple of paperbacks from there, but it's just nice to have a nice sort of traditional store. So I've got Ian M. Banks. This is Ian Banks' science fiction name. So when you see Ian M. Banks, it means it's going to be one of his science fiction stories, or sort of more fantastical stories. And I also picked up The Martian, because I really like the film, and I've never read the blinking book. So I thought it was probably about time that I make some time and read the book. Which I understand is slightly different to the film, as is often the way. But from my point of view, I think I'll be quite interested in that, because it's going to be quite a sort of a hard science fiction book, in the sense that it's less fantasy, more physics. And, although I don't have a background in physics, I do appreciate the science that goes into and the thinking that goes behind hard science fiction books. So I'm really hoping I don't already have this one. I don't think I have it, but it has been a while since I looked at my Ian M. Banks books. So I read the back and I thought, I don't immediately recognise it, but maybe the back's not descriptive enough. I don't know. But anyway, I will find out. So I picked those two up. But what actually drew my eye when I eventually decided I was going to have a look in, did I mention it was? I think it's called the Carvin Bookstore. It's behind Ian's place, just on a little road going up the side of the hill. It's apparently a very, very old bookstore. and it was actually, but it's been ranked in the top 10 bookstores in the UK, and it actually got saved from literally collapsing under its own weight, as I understand it. Now then, look at this. It's a black hole pop-up book, and it looked so good that I thought, why has somebody redone Black Hole as a pop-up book in this day and age? And the short answer is they didn't. This is old. This reminds me of a Buck Rogers one that I got a little while back, but this one just immediately got me on the front page. Just look at that. It's the sort of thing that's kind of difficult to convey on camera, but you can see that that's the Cygnus, and it just immediately comes up at you. There's the little sort of twirly black hole effect thing here, and that just immediately sort of sold me, because I thought it's so simple, but it's so effective at the same time. It's just really, really, really clever, and to find it in this sort of condition, just walking into the store was just crazy. So I'm actually going to flick through all of it, because I haven't actually been all the way through. And it's got the Palominos there. So the Palomino is here, the ship that gets rescued by the Cygnus-ish. So there's Vincent popping out the page. I think it's kind of difficult to convey this because you can't really see them sort of popping up, but maybe it will come across on video, I'm not sure. But the imagery is lovely. I'm not sure who the artist is. You've got Maximilian there, so he's movable. I just think there's a certain magic about these sort of, the effort that we went into designing this sort of thing. You've got a sort of pop-up chandelier there. We've got Bob here, bless him. We've got Vincent who can move up and down. So these bits are a little more worn with time, I think, clearly. I'm not sure that's still doing what it's supposed to be doing, actually. That perhaps has come off over time, not sure. Bit of a shame, but it's somewhat inevitable. And this is a 40-plus year old book. But I love the fact that there's a piece of string here holding this character in place. So that he's literally hanging off the piece that sort of pops up, which is incredible. And yet the string is still there somehow. You can probably see it if I put my hand behind it. There, see? That's crazy, isn't it? Presumably if I pull that'll do something. I'm not sure what exactly. Maybe that's had its day. I'm not sure. I'll not stress it. I guess that pops up, look. So that's going to crush him. Oh, wow, look at that. That's brilliant. That's very clever. Brilliant. And this is Maximilian versus Vincent, I think, here. Yep. Cool. And that's them going into the black hole. Wow. Very cool. It's very cool. I couldn't, having seen it, I couldn't leave it, because I just thought it's such an unusual thing to find anything that's sort of black hole related, because it was such a dark film for Disney. I think up until recently, Disney probably didn't know what to do with it, because Disney Plus, post Marvel, I think all the old rules no longer apply. So you can see the black hole on Disney Plus, I believe. So, if you've never watched it, and you are at all into your science fiction, you might quite enjoy it. I wouldn't say it's a guilty pleasure particularly even, but for me, I would have to put it up there as one of my big early science fiction influences, without a doubt. So, I couldn't just walk past that any more than I can walk past the Vincent and Bob figure if I spot one, So, yeah, definitely. I don't know if you'd be able to find another one, but do definitely, try and watch the film if you haven't ever, because then, it's definitely one of those classic science fiction films of its era. I'm just going to see if I can actually find a date. Yeah, 1980. So it's 44 years old, this book, and yet it's still popping up, bless it. Now, when I was recording last night, there was something that I picked up from Cromford that I forgot to show to you. And this I found in the enclosed room that I've never seen before, where all the toy vendors were, which you'll have seen on the video by now. And I actually had to go off-site, find a cash machine, come back again in order to be able to buy this. Not because it was expensive, but because I just didn't have any actual normal cash, and they wouldn't take anything but cash. And this is what I picked up. It's rather large, so I've had to come to a completely different room than normal to actually show you it in full. Now this, I had absolutely no idea I was ever going to see again, let alone in a state where I could actually sort of do something with it. This has a lot of history for me. It is a cutaway poster, about 120 by 160 centimetres, of the USS Enterprise D in the Next Generation era of Next Generation. And I had this in my childhood bedroom wall for many years. I've no idea what happened to mine. You know, I guess it got stripped down at some point. And then lo and behold, I just saw one corner of what looked like an LCARS display. And I thought, hang on, that couldn't possibly, could it? So I didn't really show it you on the video overly much, or at least I tried not to, I think, because I wanted it to be a bit of a sort of a surprise for the end of this video. But I promptly forgot last night that I hadn't actually gotten any footage of it. So it's just a really great cutaway diagram. It gives you sort of lots of info around the edges, around the Enterprise D, and it's the sort of text specky sort of stuff that I really love. But it's got information about the characters at that point in time, all sorts of stuff about, you know, tactical defensive systems, engine propulsion systems, all this cool stuff, and all of the variants of the Enterprise up until that point in time. And you can see there that it has got the C there. So this has to be post yesterday's Enterprise. But I love the technical manual that I had at the time that was all sort of next-gen orientated. Just brilliant book, and this is just a brilliant poster. So really gobsmacked that I was able to pick this up again, having not had it for, I don't know, you know, 30 odd years probably now. That's just crazy, isn't it? And now it's just a question of figuring out A, where I can actually find space to hang it, and B, how do I hang it in a way that somewhat preserves it, because it's just great. Yeah, so that was it. So that was my pretty much my final pickup, I think, of the day, because as I say, I had to sort of run and get it, and then I had to get home. So yeah, so it just goes to show it's funny what you can find when you're not looking for it. All right, cheers for now. So I think that is it for my pickups on this occasion. Not massively numerous, but I felt fairly sort of good about life in the sense that I'd given Ian some stuff to sell, which I know is already sold, at least in parts, so that was good. But that helped declutter me a little bit, and it got me a nice grouping of a series of graphic novels off the back of it. So I was quite happy with the way that turned out personally. And I think that is. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten anything else, but I think that is all that I picked up on my travels into Derbyshire on this occasion. So I hope that's been of interest. Do like and subscribe as ever, and so let me know in the comments what you think about this stuff. Cheers for now.